Hey folks, in this video we're going to be learning how to create a Google document from a Google form. So we're going to learn how to write this code here that will automatically run anytime a new submission occurs in a form. The result is going to be a document, a text document that writes itself. So it's going to be called a work order document for a person. So we're going to learn how to create these boxes that are stylized so that we can turn them into PDFs, we can email them to people, and basically we can cut down on duplicative data entry. So we are going to begin by going to Google Drive, and I would encourage you to create a project folder because we're going to have multiple assets. The first asset is going to be a Google Sheet. So I am going to go up to the new menu. I am going to select Google Sheets. And you can do this any way you want to. You could either start with the form or you can start with the sheet. So what we're going to do now is we are going to title our sheet Work Order Automation, or you can call it whatever you want to. And we are going to go up into the File menu and go to Tools, and then we are going to create a new form. And in here, we can add descriptions, and we can get really creative in here. We're going to keep this really simple though. So we're going to call this Enter Your Name. And we are going to, it automatically changes to a short answer. We're going to go to the add a question, and we are going to say something like date when you need work, and then it will be a date selector. And then we are going to do please state your request. And we'll keep that at a short answer. And we will add a question, and we will add in, please provide estimated cost. And we will have that be a short answer. And then we will include a please add any additional considerations. And we will have that be a paragraph. Cool. So this is super simple. Google Forms has a lot of really cool stuff. You can use AppScript with forms if you go up into this more section up here, and you can get really dynamic. And yeah, this is just really simple. So then you can have this, you can click on the preview icon, and that will enable you to start entering data. So I'm going to enter my name, and I am going to say that I want work done on the 22nd, and I'm going to say I need a new door. Estimated cost, I don't know how much a door costs, so I'll just say $1,000. And then let me find some random text, and I'm going to copy that and then paste it in there, and it's all about Wikipedia. And then I'm going to hit submit. And now what will happen is that data will go into a new tab in Google Sheets called Form Responses. So you can see that we get the timestamp of when the work order was submitted, the name, the date when we need work, the type of work that's needed, the estimated cost, and this long paragraph up here. So, or the note section. I am going to delete that because we don't need it. And now we have like data that we can work with. So we are going to close our form editor for now. And we are going to go to the extensions menu in the sheet. We're going to go to AppScript. And we are going to start writing some code. So in order to do this, we are going to title our project, and we'll call this Automated Work Order. And we are going to go to the Files menu, and we're going to add a new file. And we're going to use a script file, and we're going to create a custom function called getSheetById. I highly encourage you to do this. I have a video all about it, which I will link up in the description. But basically, this function will allow you to use a spreadsheet ID rather than a spreadsheet name in order to collect data. So we're going to type the word function, and then we are going to name the function getSheetById, and we are going to pass in two arguments. The first is going to be something called workbook_ID, and the second argument will be sheet_ID. We're going to do a space, we're going to do curly brackets, we're going to hit enter. We're going to declare a variable, which is called WB, which stands for workbook, and we're going to call the spreadsheet app, and we are going to open by ID, and we will pass in that WB_ID. I'm going to be going a little bit fast because I've touched on this in lots of my other videos. We're going to declare a variable for sheets, which is going to allow us to use the workbook variable in order to get the getSheets method. This is going to create an array of every sheet in our workbook. In order to access those sheets, we're going to use a for loop. So we're going to do for the variable I in sheets. We're going to go outside of our parentheses. We're going to hit space. We're going to do a curly bracket. We're going to hit enter. We're now going to use an if statement. And we're going to say if sheets square bracket I. From this point forward, when I type sheets square bracket I will use the word sheets iterator. So if sheets iterator dot get sheet ID parentheses, go to the right of the parentheses but remain within the if parentheses. If sheets iterator dot get sheet ID double equal sign sheet_ID, aka the second argument in our function. If sheets iterator dot get sheet ID is equal to the sheet ID passed into the getSheetById function, space, curly bracket, enter. If that happens, then we want to pass the sheets iterator to a variable called sheet name, which is going to be set equal to sheets iterator dot get sheet parentheses, curly or semicolon. You should now be outside of your if statement, which you can tell because we have our if statement curly brackets highlighted. Go down one row. We are now outside of our for loop because our for loop brackets are highlighted. We hit enter. We are now ready to use the word return, where we will access our WB variable, and we will get sheet by name, and then we will pass it the sheet name variable that we just constructed. We're going to hit the save icon. Now you can see the getSheetById is available as a function to run. We're going to go back to our code file. We are going to declare a constant for WB ID, and we are going to have that set to our work order automation workbook ID. We're going to find our workbook ID by going up into the URL of our Google Sheet, and we're going to go after this portion of the URL, after the /d/. We're then going to highlight everything in between the slashes. We're going to copy that ID. We're going to go back to our script and we're going to paste it in between these single quotes. This formats it as a string, which is the required way to pass the ID. We're then going to declare a constant for the sheet ID, and that is a number so we don't have to use single quotes. We're going to go to the end of our URL string and we're going to highlight value, the number value, after the portion of the URL that says GID equal sign. We're going to copy that. We're going to go back to our script. We're going to paste it and add a semicolon. We're going to hit enter and we're going to go to line 4 And now we're going to write our main function. So we're going to write the word function, and then we're going to type the word main. We're going to do a parentheses. We are not going to pass any arguments to it. We're going to do a space. We're going to do curly brackets, and we're going to hit enter. We're going to begin by creating a variable called data sheet. And now we're going to use that get sheet by ID function that we just created. And we're going to pass it two arguments. The first argument is going to be our WB ID constant. And the second argument is going to be our sheet ID constant. We now have access to the sheet that is collecting the answers from our Google form. We're going to declare a second variable called data. And here we're going to reference the data sheet. And we're going to say datasheet.getRange. And we are going to begin at row 1, do a comma. We're going to begin at column 1. We're going to do a comma. And then we're going to go the entire length of the data sheet. So we're going to say datasheet.getLastRow, parentheses, comma. And then we're going to do the same thing for the number of columns that we're going to go. We're going to do datasheet.getLast column, parentheses. And then we are going to go to the right of get range, and we are going to say .get display values, parentheses, semicolon. Great. We now have the data that we want to work with. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a document. So we are going to add a comment, and we are going to say document creation. And here we are going to do variable for doc create. And we're going to have that set equal to document app.create. And we are going to title this work order for, and then we're going to have a space. So you can see we have single quotes, work order for, and then a space. We're going to go to the right of our single quote, and we're going to use a plus sign. We're then going to reference data, square brackets, data dot length -1, and then we're going to do square bracket 1. This will allow us to access the most recent name in our data sheet. Now that I'm saying it, why don't we pause on the document creation for now, highlight the row of code that we just wrote, so row 9, and then do a comment on it. So we're going to do // right? If you're on a Mac, what you can do is you can highlight the entire row, hold down Command, and then hit the question mark / key. And then that'll just automatically add a comment. So what I want to do real quick is just kind of explain what data and data.length -1 is doing. So we're going to do some logging real quick. We're going to do logger.log data. And we're going to go, we're going to hit save so that our function runs. So if you tried to run this, it wouldn't run. It doesn't even let you run. So we're hitting save, and then you can see main is available as a function. We are going to run. We're going to have to give permission to our sheet. Go to advanced, go to automated work order, go to allow. Cool. And now you can see we've collected all of the data that exists in here. So I don't know if we've talked about this in AppScript before, but the way the data is structured within AppScript is in an array. So you can see we have these square brackets here. The first bracket is for the entire array, and then this section here is an array. And then you can see this is the second row here. So this is row 1 right here up until the comma, and then this is row 2. And you can see we have a square bracket here to close out row 2. And then we have a square bracket here to close out the entire array. So what's going to happen is we need to construct logic that enables us to collect the most recent row of data that comes in from the form. So if you get a new form response, we want to just go right to the new form, right? So what we're going to do here is we're going to say logger.log data.length. And what length does is it literally returns the number of rows that you have. So you can see we're getting 2. And the reason for that is because row 1 is timestamp, row 2 is the first work order submission that we received. So you can see how that changes. I'm going to submit another response. And this one is not going to be as eloquent as the one that I just wrote. We're going to do David, and we are going to do 17th, and we're going to say sync cost is 50, and additional considerations, none. So we're going to hit submit. And we're going to go back to our sheet, and you can see that we have those values that we just entered in there. When we go back and we run our script, you can see data.length now represents 3 rows. Now, the challenge that we get into in working with arrays is the index is set to 0. So what happens is when we push data.length when trying to access the data array, it doesn't exist. So in looking at this again, this row here, this array here, is actually index 0. The first row of data that's in column 1 is actually index 1, right? Even though it's row 2. So I apologize if I just misspoke there. Row 2, which is our first line of data from our form, our first submission, if you will, my apologies, has an index of 1, even though its row in the spreadsheet is 2. So what happens is data.length returns 3 because it's 1, 2, 3, but the index of the array is set to 0, 1, 2. So in order to compensate for that, when we're attempting to access portions of the array, we need to remove 1 from the length of the array. So for example, if we did another logger.log and we did data and we did 0, the result that we are going to get should be that first row, right? So you can see I added in 0 there, and we're getting timestamp. If we went to data and we attempted to pass number 3, aka data.length, we're going to get an error, right? You can see we're getting null. Well, we're not getting an error, we're just getting null. And the reason for that is because index 3 is actually row 4. It's not row 3 because the data array has an index of 0, right? So just one more time, we're going to enter in 1, and that is going to give us the row for Matt. If we wanted to use data.length to get the most recent row, which is technically row 2, right? So, or sorry, it's not row 2, it's index 2, row 3. So you can see when we enter in data square bracket 2, we're getting David, right? So it says data 2, and we're getting David, but when we go to the spreadsheet, you can see it's row 3, right? So when we get data.length, we're getting 3. But we can't use 3 because we don't have an index of 3. So in the event that we wanted to use data.length to get to our second index or our third row, we could enter in data square bracket data.length minus 1. And when we do this, we should get row 3 again, right? You can see we've recreated the same thing as entering in 2. So just so that you can see, I'm going to do that again. And then in the event that we just wanted to get the person's name, we're working off a 0 index. So even though this is column A, or the first column, it has an index of 0, which means column B, or the second column, has an index of 1. So when we want to return a name, we reference data, we reference the index row that we want, and then we enter the index column that we want. So we're going to enter in the number 1. When we run this, we should return David. Cool. So when we are creating our document and we want to say work order 4, and then we want to collect the name from the data set, we're going to reference data square bracket data.length minus 1 in order to get the most recent row with a work order form request. And then we're going to reference the column with the index of 1, which is technically our second column. We are now going to create a variable that accesses the document's body. So we're going to say doc create dot get body. We're going to do a parentheses and a semicolon. We're also going to create an index variable, which is set to 0. We're now going to construct the tables within our work order form. So we're going to be leveraging some arrays. This is going to touch back on that 0 index and the data.length section that we just touched on. So if you're a little bit confused, hopefully this next portion will provide more examples and more opportunities to kind of try and get a grasp on it. So we're going to write a comment for table layout. And we're going to begin by creating a name table. So we're going to declare variable name table, and we're going to have that equal to square bracket. We're going to hit enter. We're going to open up another square bracket, and we're going to type the word, we're going to do single quote, and we're going to type name. We're going to do a comma. We're then going to reference our data variable. We're going to do a square bracket, and we're going to do data.length minus 1. And you know what we actually could do is we could declare data.length minus 1 as a variable so that we could access that in perpetuity instead of having to write data.length minus 1. So why don't we do that underneath our index? We're going to say variable start row, and we're going to set that to data.length minus 1. And let's test that to make sure that works. So we're going to do start row, and then we're going to do 1. Cool. So now what we're going to do is cross our fingers and type logger.log name table. And what we should see is an array with the data that we want. Now we don't want to create the document just yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to comment out doc create. So take a moment, comment that out. Otherwise, you're going to be creating a document, a blank document. And we're going to hit run. This is now going to ask us for, doc create is not defined. My bad, shouldn't have done that. You know what? We're just going to create the document. So we're going to hit save. We're going to hit run. This will also give us an opportunity to give permission to create documents, I believe. Nope, never mind. But now you can see we're getting name and David, so that start row variable works perfectly. We are going to get rid of that logger. And now we're going to declare a variable for date table. And we're going to have that set to empty square bracket. We're going to hit enter. And you know what? I'm going to add a little bit of space here so that we can scroll up. So we are going to add in a square bracket, single quote, date, date, comma, and then we're going to reference data And then we are going to reference start row, and we're going to go to the right of the square bracket after that. And then instead of doing a 1, we're going to do a 2. That way we're referencing the third column in our data set. We're going to declare a variable for request table. We're going to have that set to an empty square bracket. We're going to hit enter, and we're going to do another square bracket, and we're going to call this request. Then we're going to do a comma, and we're going to do data, square bracket, start row, and then we are going to reference 3 because we want to access our 4th column. We're going to now declare a variable for price table. We're going to have that equal to empty square bracket. We're going to enter in another empty square, and we're going to say cost. And then we're going to do comma, and we're going to say data, start row. We're going to go to the right of that. We're going to enter in 4 for our 5th column. And finally, we are going to do var notes table. We're going to have that equal to square bracket. We're going to hit enter. We're going to do square bracket. We're going to type this as notes. Now, the difference here is that we're going to have our notes header stacked on top of our notes because it's potentially going to be a paragraph. So instead of doing a comma after the string, right? So you can see we have square bracket, single quote, notes, single quote, square bracket. We're going to do a comma. We're going to do another square bracket. We're going to type data, square bracket, data dot length. Oh, sorry. We don't need to do that. We can just do start row. I mean, you could do data dot length -1 if you want to. So data, square bracket, start row, square bracket, and then we're going to do another square bracket, and we're going to reference 5 so we can get our 6th column. Now we are going to build our doc. So we're going to do a comment, and I'm going to add some space so that we can scroll up a little bit. Hopefully you can see well. We're going to call this doc build, and we are going to declare a variable for name, and we are going to say body.insert table, and then we're going to reference that index variable because we need to have a child element in here, and then we're going to reference our name table variable. We're going to do a semicolon, we're going to do index plus plus semicolon. Then we are going to go down and we're going to do var date, and we're going to have that set to body.insert table index, and then date table, semicolon, index plus plus semicolon. Now you can keep typing this out with me, or you can just copy paste. It's up to you. The only reason that I'm typing it all out is so that the repetition potentially gets in, but you know, this is also potentially very boring for you, so just copy paste. Body.insert table index, comma, request table, semicolon, index plus plus semicolon, var price equals body.insert table index, comma, price table, semicolon, index plus plus semicolon, var notes equals body.insert table index, comma, notes table, semicolon, index plus plus semicolon. So this is not going to have any style elements to it, but what we're going to do now is we're going to save, we're going to run. We are hopefully not going to get any errors. Perfect. We're going to go to our Google Drive. We know that we have some of these old ones in here from when we had that false start on the document. So I'm going to delete them because we don't need them anymore. And we're going to open this up. And what we should see is a bunch of tables. Cool. So you can see like we have these like long document sized tables. There's no style to them. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back and we're going to learn how to resize the tables and add in style elements. So you know what? Let's delete this work order so that we don't need to look at it anymore. And we're going to go back to our script. We're going to hit X there. And we are going to scroll up and let's start before our table layout section. And we are going to call this, do a comment, and we'll say style elements. And we are going to declare a variable for header style. And we're going to have that equal to an empty curly bracket. Okay. Then we're going to type header style, square bracket. We're going to use documents app dot attribute dot bold, and we're going to have that set to true. And then we're going to use a semicolon. Then we're going to go back down to our doc build section, and we are going to reference each of the variables. So we are going to call name dot get cell, and we're going to reference index 0, 0. And we are going to set our width to 75. And then we're going to set background color to single quote, hashtag, B7, B7, B7. We're going to go to the right of that, and we're going to set attributes, parentheses, to that header style variable that we just created. We're then going to go down one row, and we're going to do name.getCell, and then we're going to reference cell 0, 1. And we're going to set width to 175. Okay? We're going to hit save, and then we're going to run it again so that you can see what happens. Cool, so we get that work order for David. And then you can see this box is now a little bit longer in case the person enters their full name. And then we also have the stylization on the field, right? So the name. So we're going to apply that formatting across the board to these next 3 boxes, date, request, cost. And then for notes, we're going to extend the notes so that it's a larger section for us. So we're going to close that down. And now what we're going to do, just to save time, because we're like going on here, is we're just going to copy name.getCell. You know, if you're adventurous, you could probably write a function for this. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to Mac. If you go to Option and click, you can see you then have 2 cursors. So I'm going to delete name, and then I'm going to type in date, just like that. So then I kind of save myself some time. Otherwise, you can just like just delete each instance. We're going to go to request. We're going to paste again, and then we're going to go here. We're going to hold down option. We're going to delete name, and we're going to change it to reference the request variable. We're going to go to price. We're going to paste that in there. We are going to click next to name, hold down option, click next to name, reference price. And then for notes, all we're going to do is we're just going to use that header style version, and then we're just going to let notes like do its own thing. So we are going to clear that bottom line, change name to notes, and we're going to hit save, and then we are going to run it, and we are getting a successful result. I'm going to delete my old doc there. We now have the new doc there. We double click on it and check it out. We now have this like really cool dynamic set here. Now this notes thing, because I wrote none, was very small. If you want to, you can set the width to be bigger than this by default. So let me do that now, just so that you have it. No, you know what? Let's go to the example. If you need to, use um, these two lines of code here in order to play around with it. It should auto expand and contract. Um, I'm so sorry. The reason that ended up doing it was because I did this. I'm so silly. Okay, cool. So that should solve that. You shouldn't need to use set with, but if you do experience errors, that's a place that you can kind of play around with stuff. What we're going to do now is we're done our coding portion of it. We're now going to go over to triggers, and we're in the home stretch. This is really easy. You're going to create a new trigger. You're going to change it, the select event source here, or sorry, select event type here from on open to on form submit. You'll hit save. You have to allow access here. So you just click on your email account, go to advanced, scroll down, go to automated work order, go to allow, and there we go. So now what we're going to do is we are going to submit another response. And before we do that, I'm going to go to my Google Drive and delete that doc because we don't need it anymore. And we are going to enter in something unique. So we're going to do Josh, and we're going to put August 15th, and he wants a new bathtub. Cost is going to be $2,000. And then additional comments. I'm just going to grab some text over here. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste my answer in. I'm going to submit my code. I'm going to go back into my document, and you can see that we have that new line here. And when we go to our Google Drive, you can see we now have that work order for Josh. So we double click and check it out. We automatically create a document. So to summarize, what we learned how to do today was we learned how to automate the creation of Google Documents using a Google form. We created a Google form that collected data entry, sent it to a Google Sheet, and once it entered the Google Sheet, it was then stylized, formatted, and created a Google document that ended up in our Google Drive. I hope you found this helpful. I really appreciate all the feedback that I get in the comments section. So please let me know if you had any errors or if you're having any issues, and I'll do my best to help you out. I hope you enjoyed this, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.